Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Avis Williams, proud superintendent for NOLA Public Schools, and I do thank you for joining us here today on behalf of Orleans Parish School Board and all of NOLA Public Schools. So we're here today to basically just assure our families and the community that first and foremost, the well-being of our scholars, of our educators, of our team members will remain our top priority. And it's important to know that we're proactively addressing the saltwater intrusion issue, and it's being done through a well-coordinated approach. Our operations team, led by Mr. Don LaDuff, is working closely with various agencies, including the City of New Orleans, the New Orleans Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, the United States Army Corps of Engineers, as well as the Louisiana Department of Health, to ensure that we do have a unified response and that we're getting the best and most timely information. We're also collaborating with environmental health experts and professional engineers as we assess the water, our mechanical systems, and our facilities so that we can prioritize, again, the well-being of our students and staff. In addition to this, we're partnering with our neighbors. I'm in close contact with Dr. James Gray, the superintendent for Jefferson Parish Schools, and we're also in the process of coordinating with our other neighboring surrounding school districts. We definitely believe that we're stronger together, and as we unify and plan how we move forward, we can do that by potentially sharing information as well as resources. So it's important for us to address this issue head on and not in such a way that we're inciting any panic. Today is the opposite of that. We want to not incite any panic, and we want to just let the community know what we're doing so far, what we know so far, and what our families can expect as we move forward. So what we know so far is that the saltwater has not reached Orleans Parish yet. We also know that our water at this point remains safe to drink. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers progression timeline still has New Orleans having the impact around late October. Now, should Orleans or Jefferson Parish experience any saltwater impacts, the community will be notified well in advance. Our school communities will be notified well in advance. And although current treatment and filtration systems do not address saltwater, the Sewage and Water Board plans to continue to treat and deliver water as usual by using or for uses other than drinking, rather. No matter the salinity levels of our water will be available for wastewater purposes, and this will include flushing toilets, bathing, as well as fire suppression. The city is also working on a contingency plan for water distribution should the saltwater wedge reach Orleans Parish. And the key there is should it reach us, and so we'll continue to pay close attention to that timeline. As far as forecasted saltwater progression, if the wedge continues to build as is estimated to, then it will reach New Orleans, Algiers around October 22nd and eventually reach East Jefferson by about October 29th. In looking at our drinking water needs in the Algiers water treatment plant that serves the West Bank, it treats approximately 15 million gallons of water per day. And in contrast, the Carrollton water treatment plant, which serves the East Bank of New Orleans, it treats approximately 150 million gallons of water per day. And you can see there's a stark difference between what's happening on the East Bank versus the West Bank. And so here's what we're working on. Available drinking water. We're working with NOSEP on distribution of bottled water if necessary. And again, this is one measure that we will take just again based on that data as necessary. Our food services team is working closely with the child nutrition teams of all of our schools to ensure that we are preparing healthy meals. And this is including the schools that we serve directly as well as those who have their own food service. And they will be receiving detailed guidance, and we do encourage them to utilize existing food vendors for safe food preparation. In terms of water fountains, water filters we use in our schools are for filtering sediment, lead, and microorganisms. Those filters are not effective for removing excess salt from the water. And so if it becomes necessary, we will cover the water fountains to ensure that no one is drinking unsafe water from the water fountains. In terms of our kitchen equipment, All equipment that utilizes the tap water as a resource will be shut down if necessary, and those lines will be disconnected. And again, these are all mitigation factors that will continue to look at data to determine whether these things will be necessary or not. Considering installing new equipment. As we move forward, all new equipment systems would need to be approved by NOLA-PS's facilities department. And this is for our schools. So if you're looking at making any modifications, we just do ask that we get that approval through the facilities alteration request form. And that's if the situation escalates to that point. In terms of our mechanical systems, we're working with engineers to truly understand the effects of salt water on the various types of HVAC systems in our portfolio. And this includes water towers, open loop, as well as closed loop systems. And we would provide further guidance on this as needed. In terms of ground maintenance, we're looking at our irrigation systems. We do have automatic sprinklers that water plants and grass, and we will pay close attention as to whether those need to be discontinued as we move forward. We are asking all of our schools to let us know about their fall break schedules. It's that time of year where some schools are out for a long weekend and others are out for a week for fall break. And so we do want to make sure that we work closely with our schools to secure facilities and to help prevent any potential damage. In terms of next steps, as we continue to monitor, we'll pay close attention to the Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, as well as those other agencies that I mentioned earlier, including the Army Corps of Engineers, the Sewage and Water Board, and NOLA Ready. And for any of our citizens, our families out there, you can always text NOLA Ready to 77295 to receive emergency alerts from the city, and that is a great resource. And so in terms of further communication, in the spirit of providing effective and connected communication, we will continue to stay in close contact with all of those agencies as this thing progresses and moves forward. And today is really just about letting the community know where we are at this point and to be sure that we're not inciting any panic once again, and that this is a situation that as we continue to monitor, things may change, and we will continue to have effective and connected communication as things progress. And this will be done in a coordinated fashion, again, collaborating closely with the city as well as other agencies, and staying in lockstep with our neighboring school district, Jefferson Parish, just so that we, again, can share that great information as well as sharing resources. And at this point, that concludes my comments, and I will take any questions.
Yes, we'll start here with WDSU.
If in the case that we do need that water distribution, how soon are we expecting students and parents to be able to get bottles of water?
Yeah, so we will work closely with setting up a centralized location. Likely we'll consider either the Mahalia Jackson site or 35 College Prep as a potential site. And the time frame for that will be determined based on the need. So we will keep families posted well in advance so that they do have time to make plans if it's necessary for them to pick up water.
And as far as I want to say you mentioned child nutrition teams. Can you explain just a little bit deeper as far as what that meal plan shift might look like?
Oh, sure, yeah. So we provide meals for a number of our schools, and then some of our schools provide their own food service. And so we'll modify recipes so that we're using more heat-to-serve options. May not be the best, so we may not have the home cooking amazing meals that some of our scholars are used to, but we will have to eliminate the use of some cooking equipment if it requires the use of water. And there may just be some modified meals and some pre-packaging of meals. And our team will, of course, share this information and support our schools as necessary so that they are prepared to do that.
WGNO?
Is the school district considering purchasing any reverse osmosis machines if necessary?
I'll defer to our Chief Operations Officer for that.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Yeah, so we're working closely with our schools about purchasing some of those RO equipment for particular the kitchen equipment, not necessarily for entire school setup.
So the water fountain can still be turned off?
Correct. Okay. Yeah. This is mostly for kitchen equipment to make sure that we're able to provide clean water for cooking. Okay.
What the central message you're trying to convey today about where the school system is and what will be at?
Yeah, so the central message is that we're continuing business as usual while paying close attention to the data and having a coordinated effort in collaboration with the city and various agencies, including the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, our surrounding parishes, just to ensure that we're able to get information as quickly as possible and to relay that to our families. And also want families to know that as we get information, we'll let them know as timely as possible. And we're not, again, trying to incite any panic or alarm, because right now it does look like there's time for us to plan ahead for this, and we will continue to do that as well as communicate what any changes.
If I might follow up, so as we talked today, no immediate changes.
No immediate changes. And I wanted to defer to our board president, Orleans Parish Board President, Mr. Olin Parker.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. I just to echo some of the comments that Dr. Williams has made to that question. The board is extremely confident in the leadership that we have in place. Every question that we have asked so far about saltwater intrusion, Dr. Williams and her team are already multiple steps ahead. They've been engaging in all these conversations with the city. They've been preparing, and frankly, and unfortunately, this is a district that has handled disasters well in the past, and I have no doubt that this team will continue to do so as we. This is different than other situations that we've had before, in that we have time to prepare for it, and you can see the level of preparation that has already gone in. So the board is very confident that we will be able to continue business as much as we can. We'll be able to continue business as usual.
Are students allowed to bring in their own bottled water?
Yes, at every school on campus, students are able and very often encouraged to bring in their own bottle of water to avoid disruptions to class.
Okay, Axios?
Dr. Williams, you mentioned working with engineers and facilities teams. I wonder if any of that work that you guys are preparing for addresses examining potential corrosion on campus, in schools, in those pipelines. I know you mentioned filters already address lead on the water fountains, but I'm thinking more in terms of corrosion that could damage school infrastructure.
Absolutely. So we will be looking at our HVAC systems and any of the other systems that might be impacted, and I'll let Don answer that.
Don LeDuff, L-E-D-U-F-F. Yes, so to address that question directly, we are working with the engineers to understand the effects of the saltwater intrusion on our systems. And what we're hearing mostly now is that the effects come in long term. So the more exposure of salt water to the systems will affect, I think, the corrosion levels. So if we can take care of this now, and we're working closely with the city, the least amount of time that salt water enters our system is better for us.
And Dr. Williams, you mentioned, thanks Don, appreciate it, not trying to kick you out. Dr. Williams, you mentioned distribution of water. You said MAC 35 and one other school, I believe.
Our Mahalia Jackson site. It's one of our family resource centers.
Got it. So when you mentioned that distribution, is that specifically for students, or is that working with NOSEP as a distribution site for the city?
It'll be for families, for school families. So it'll be specific to NOLA-PS school families.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, the lens?
Dr. Williams, can you tell us a little bit about whether families can or should expect any schooling interruptions? Is there any chance we're going to be moving to a remote learning situation, and could that happen different timing on the west or the east bank?
Absolutely. I have no expectation that we'll have to shift to any remote learning or anything of that nature. And I do look at that as a worst case scenario. And as we continue to look at the data, we will, of course, keep families informed. But I have no expectation that that's a step ahead.
And are there any facilities, might be more for Don, that are particularly vulnerable for any reason, whether that's there on the West Bank or anything like that those school families should be expecting different impacts?
The only impacts that we're looking at now is our HVAC mechanical systems. We have a couple different types. So if we have an open loop, which uses much more water to help cool the building, those are the ones that we're going to focus on as far as vulnerabilities. And I just want to clear up, when we talk about distribution at our centers, that is going to be specifically for schools. The city is putting together distribution centers around different areas in the city. We're going to have these set up just for school purposes. Thank you.
The advocate?
Hi. I believe that last week we heard that there was some thought of distribution being done by particular schools. That may be incorrect. I just am wondering if there's any distribution that is specific to schools or if it's just going to be those two centers.
Yeah, and so those two centers will be available for all of our schools. And we know we've got our networks who have partnerships and who are working closely with their families and partners. So there may be some internal distribution within our schools, but those two centers will be for all of the schools within NOLA Public Schools.
And in terms of timeline, is there a sort of, what is the marker? What's the sort of, is it a certain amount of, so is it a go ahead from, the state? What's the sort of thing that kicks that off?
So we're taking our cues from the agencies that are running this as they give us, this is the go time, this is when we need to enact these plans, that's when we'll go. But we have no timeline because, of course, the plan is to not have to go into this modified water usage. So as we hear from the experts, that's when we'll go ahead and implement this plan.
Did I leave anybody out? Okay, sorry.
Hi. Is water that's going to be distributed, is that coming from the city or is the district stockpiling a certain amount of water that it is purchasing itself?
Yeah, we're purchasing it ourselves. And again, that's still yet to be seen if that will be necessary or not, but it is water that the district is purchasing.
Okay, is actively purchasing or will purchase if need be?
We will purchase it as need be, and we already have plans in place to be able to move forward with that. And with that question, I do want to encourage the community not to hoard water. I know I've seen that on the news several times, which can be a barrier to the entire city moving forward if we're hoarding water. And so even for us, it will be done on an as-needed basis as this progresses, and again, taking our guidance and our leadership from the entities that are the experts on this.
And understanding that, do you guys have a ballpark in terms of how much water you'd be needing to purchase?
Well, we have 43,000 students, so a lot. Right now, we're looking at a number of pallets. I don't know if we've identified the specific amount yet, and that will be yet to be determined too. Because one thing that we'll have to look at is how long are we going to need the water. That will be the determining factor as to how much we'll actually need to order.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Parker.
I just wanted to add on to Chelsea, your question from earlier, talking about the impacts of saltwater on our facilities. This is something that Mr. Leduff and his team are definitely looking into and coming up with answers, more and more answers every day. One thing that I did want to bring up in this conversation, we have a school facilities millage renewal on the ballot coming up in just a couple of weeks. That funding, if approved by voters, will go to support things like the long-term impacts on our facilities from this saltwater intrusion. I mentioned earlier that our district has become quite adept at handling crises, whether that is a hurricane or a pandemic or a fire. This is another crisis. The millage funding for that, the millage funding that is raised for facilities goes towards crises like this to make sure that our buildings are in good working order, not just this fall when the saltwater is expected to hit New Orleans, but also for the next 20 years as we continue to see impacts from crises like this.
I'm sorry. Everybody good? You have a question, Samantha? Okay,
Yes.
last question.
So if all of the remedial efforts are not successful and the salt water gets in and impacts the piping and whatever, are you insured against that?
We are insured, but to President Parker's point, having the funding to be able to ensure that we're able to make those repairs will absolutely be necessary. Thank you.